Welcome to Open Enough to Listen, the podcast for real stories, raw perspectives, unfiltered conversations. We push past the surface, challenge what we know, and truly listen. All right, let's get into it. So today we're gonna be talking about autism awareness, and the effects it has on parents. Today we have Kendall. Go ahead and
Yep,
tell
my
them about
name is
yourself.
Kendall. My name is Kendall. I have three children. My middle boy, girl, boy. My middle child, which is 13, is on the spectrum. She is high functional, but it's still a process.
Yes, and I too have my oldest, 12 years old, EJ. He's on the spectrum, and we're going to discuss some questions when it comes to parenting and what we learned, different things that we had to go through, and understanding as it comes. So our kids been on the spectrum. All right, first question: what were some of the biggest fears or concerns when your child was young when you found out?
I think the biggest fear was the uncertainty because it's no like it was a book that somebody gave me called A Child Called It, and I kind of read that book, and you kind of there's really no guide to it. Everybody's child is kind of different. So people were trying to give me advice on how to deal with her. And it was just tough. And I think preschool through from preschool to kindergarten from to first grade was the roughest years because the testing process is not fast paced, it's very slow. And I'm located in Ohio, so the process is really, really slow. So it's kind of like she couldn't deal with a lot of loud sound. She was very active. She had a lot of energy, and just going through that testing, I was up at her school every other day. So, and it got so bad that I even moved her to a school close to my job, so then I could just go on my break and go to her school because I was just back and forth, and I would get calls all the time. So it was really tough. It was tough. I was with her mom at the time, so it was two of us, but still, for two parents, it still was a lot. So I can imagine how much one parent has to go through to get a kid through school or just anything.
No, I would definitely kind of piggyback on that. It takes a village to be able to, you know, first kind of understand and deal with the fact that, you know, your kid is autistic. And I would definitely say that, it is a challenge, because they're different than the other kids, and it's kind of like trying to figure out, what's the best way they learn, trying to figure out what's the best way you can parent them because you have to parent them different than, other kids. And like when it comes to the question, I think the concern that I had, I would say as he got a little older, um, I would say like maybe 4 or 5, I started to kind of look at, you know, as it pertains to what's it gonna look like when they get older. you know, how's the testing going to take out? Because, like you said, the testing, I think that's something that people don't know. Where it's like you have to go to speech therapy, you have to go
Mhm.
to physical therapy, you got to go to all these different things and have these different appointments when it comes to the doctor, along with all the things and the different programs and people that will be involved, when it comes to school. So, yeah, I believe that's something, as far as concerned. How would you say, like, how did you learn how to navigate therapy, school, and medical systems early on? Since we was talking about that.
Navigating, I'm still trying to navigate. It's very tough, and I feel like children in general can like tear a marriage apart or a relationship apart, just in general because I feel like we don't talk enough about our childhood and how we believe a child should be raised before we even have a child. So when you have a autistic child where the levels of like their cognitive levels are very maybe low and they don't realize the things that they do can affect other people, they just react. And then you're one parent is saying, "Hey, I believe they're doing this on purpose," and the other parent is like, "Nah, it's a part of their disability," and it's just really a bad process to kind of navigate through when both parents are arguing with each other going through this process. So navigating has always been tough. I mean, at one point in time, I had over like when she was going through testing, I had over 12 people in her meeting, and my next meeting was going to be with the superintendent. So I just started climbing psychologist, therapist, sociologist, like counselor, like principal, vice principal. I had all these people in this meeting for one child, and it's like it started off with just the teacher, then it started off with the teacher and assistant. Then it started off with the vice principal and the teacher and assistant. Then it started off with the principal, and then we just every meeting it was more and more people until one day they just realized that I wasn't gonna budge. I wasn't gonna budge until they wrote her IEP, and they kept saying she doesn't need it because she's high functional, so she hides it well. But I knew what my child needs. Even uh, her therapist, I think that's what they called it back then. Yeah, her therapist was even telling them like, "Nah, she's autism. She's autistic. She needs it. She needs it." And they kept saying, "No, no, no. She doesn't need it. She's fine." But they would call me every day when she would do something. So I was like, "Just write it." So then we was able to realize that my daughter does not do well in big classrooms. So now she went started to go to a school that was a private school that had only 5 children in the classroom. Yeah, I had to pay for it, but it was worth it for her to be able to grow. And now she didn't talk to nobody. She didn't know how to deal with other children besides her
Mm.
brothers. And now she is the most talkative one and she has friends. So it was a process and we've been able to navigate it. But I wouldn't wish this on anybody.
No, I'm with you. I would say just in the beginning, as far as navigator, I would definitely say, um, I think it was extremely hard for me, and I could own it. I was somewhat in denial. I would say for like a couple of years, because he was so high functioning, and just with his story, it was more so he had got a lot of shots, and all this stuff could be debatable as far as that. But I'm just saying, from a parent's perspective, he had got a lot of shots. We was young, so he got like I want to say it was like 6 or 7 shots all at once. And then before that, he was saying, speaking and pretty much getting ready to walk at like 9 months. And then once he got his shots, everything, he turned kind of mute. Um, and then he kind of started to, say a couple of words here and there, but it's like as he got older and, we would play with him, he would do normal things. And I think it was probably like until going to preschools when we kind of start to see a difference. And then, he started going to therapy because he was having, at first, it was somewhat of a hard time, him walking just for his balance or whatever. And so for a minute, because like I had a flag football, soccer, I'm training him, to be that kid that, again, my first son. So it's just like, I'm not, this uncharted territories for me because I've never, to my knowledge, understood at that time or knew anyone who had a kid that was autistic. So when it came down to his IEP and like kind of realizing, I think for me, that was extremely hard because I was somewhat in denial. Like, no, he's gonna test out of this. He's gonna get through this. And it was a reality I had to kind of realize, like, you know, we're gonna have to work through it. And me and his mom, somewhat had a hard time with that. Like, just one understanding it, but just like, man, we love him to death, but it's just like we couldn't believe like this is happening to us in that time. Like, I think after time I've kind of grew to understood or understand pretty much, okay, this is my cards, this is what God has gave, and just pretty much deal with and do the best that I can for him. And as for me, his mom. her family, my family, because it had really been a village when it comes to him. And one thing I would say that I would, when it comes to all of my kids, him in particular, at least for me, he's probably the most lovingest. Like when you say agape love, like he may be frustrated, but it'd be like nothing ever happened. He's like always smiling, always want to give a hug, always want to be helpful. So it's just like, it became a blessing, but just navigating at first was extremely tough because it don't come with a manual. We could figure out trying to raise kids, but when it comes to there are people telling you, well, you got to get a speech therapist. Well, you got to go to physical therapy where you got to set this up. Well, he may have to take medicine. Well, we don't know about this. Okay, well, to have him do an IEP test and then, we'll go from there. And then I was like you have said different times as far as I know when he was specifically out um in California, even a little bit in Ohio, but in California it was like I would go up there, check him on at school, talk to his teacher. I never forget his teacher, Miss Rascon, but talk to his teacher, see how he's doing in school, because I had the time off, but it was just like it can be a headache, but it's like, as parents, that's our kids. So, we gonna make do. But it's like you said, it's rough. I wouldn't necessarily wish that on lot because it's a lot. Especially if you don't have a family, if you don't know what to do in that situation.
Yeah, it's tough to deal with. I tell people all the time, like kids are difficult as is, but when you have an autistic kid or a kid with a disability, that's another level that you have to deal with. And sometimes people can't relate because some people have never been through it. So we take advice from people that don't have that type of child situation, and we expect them to understand, and then we get frustrated because they don't understand, but in reality they never been through it, they never experienced it. I mean, somebody could tell me all the time, oh, my brother was autistic, or my aunt was autistic, or my friend from school was autistic. That's different when you're dealing with your child that's autistic. So it's a whole different conversation. Even somebody that has a child that's autistic is different levels. I mean, I have friends that their kid didn't still don't speak, and the kid is 12 years old. I have friends that have autistic children that rub poop on the walls in the bathroom. Just levels. It's
Hmm.
like
It is.
you. It's not nothing. I just listen because at the end of the day, like you can't really change the situation, but you can help the situation. But sometimes they just want to listen. They just want to vent and get
Hmm.
somebody to listen and maybe throw out a advice that, hey, you should just try this, try that, but not being like, hey, you're a bad parent because you let your child do this, 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 and you don't discipline them. It's like, no, this is a whole different animal over here.
Yeah, and so okay, that's funny because it goes into what I was going to ask you. So I'll ask you this. I'm going to say my story. I just want to see if you ever had an incident like this. But I remember this was way back when I was. This goes to my next question because I was going to ask. Well, the question is, I'm all over the place. Are there things you would have done differently during your younger years? And to that question, it's a story that I'll never forget because I remember you know being at the barber shop and I took my son to get a haircut and it was the first time I was just trying to really get out, get in and get out. And you know EJ, I told him, I was like, hey, keep this cut, he's gonna move. So he pretty much started cutting and he started getting mad at EJ because he's moving. And he was like, man, you need to stop crying, this is that. So then I got irritated. And like, again, I said something, but granted, the guy didn't know. He
Hmm.
thought he was a regular kid. But I end up kind of going off on a dude, and then come to find, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. He ended up having a nephew that was autistic, so he was very apologetic, but I didn't have to go off like that. But it was more so when I was younger, it was more so a trigger for me because like all the stuff that we already got to go through with our son, and
Hmm.
then that happened, and it just showed me in a sense, just as a parent, in the real world, no one's not going to care. and that was my lesson in that moment, because like no one's not going to care if your kid is autistic. They're not going to look at your kid as autistic. They're going to look
Mm-mm.
at him as, okay, he's a kid, or if he's a he's a black boy, he's a black girl, or it's, or it's a white girl, it's a white, it don't matter. They're going to look at you as a person, not knowing, especially if you could be high functioning. They're going to think that you're regular, and then it'll come off um kind of bad. And um last, I got so many stories. Last one I would say, my aunt Tanya, and this was when I was working in law enforcement. My aunt pretty much told me about a situation I didn't know, but I was working in the jails, and it was a kid that had stole something, and they sent him to jail. It should have just been like a turnaround. He was let go because the kid never been in trouble, and the kid was trying to get his stuff back. He was autistic. He didn't know what he was doing. So the cellmate ended up killing him. Ended up being a lawsuit. But you put someone that had a disability or that was autistic with someone regular. That's obviously not supposed to happen, but that just lets you know, in a sense, when people don't understand mental health or understand when someone has a problem, you can't treat them the same as
Mhm.
someone regular, because there could be ramifications because they don't understand or comprehend, some of them, as well as, regular, or I wouldn't say regular, but just people in general,
Yeah.
so, but go ahead. I'm sorry. I was long-winded.
No, I guess you gotta read me the question again.
No, pretty much, over the years, what have you learned that you can say to your early self that was different?
Yeah. So one thing I've learned and I've been like kind of implemented over the past few years is time. Like really time. So spending time with the child on like kind of really just them, just you and them, just really you and them, just hanging out, just spending time, whatever they want to do. Because I've learned one thing about my daughter is she is very, very smart in her own way. So, for example, she would take tests and she would score high on the test, and they'd be like, "Well, we never went over that." But if you give her that same test again, she's like, "I just took this. I'm not doing this again. Like I just did it. I showed you I could do it. Why I got to do it again?" And it used to make the teachers upset because everything is repetition. They keep doing it over and over. And she's like, "All right, well, I'm gonna just play with it." So she will play and draw pictures and just she's like, I already did it. I showed you. I know what 1 plus 1 is. Why do I keep got to do 1 plus 1? I know what it is. So I had to learn like just spending time with her and just really letting her know, like, hey, in life you got to keep doing things over and over again for it to stick. And sometimes it gets boring. Repetition is boring. But that's the way to be great is that you have to keep repeating yourself over and over and over and over again. And the teacher is not giving you the paper to challenge that you didn't get it right, the teachers give you the paper because you have to keep doing it over and over. So it was just a process of just spending time with her and make her realize that that the people are going to challenge you. And when they do challenge you, it's not out of like they don't believe in you. It's more kind of just really them not understanding you.
Mhm.
And you have to like tell people and talk and just spending time with her was able to get her to really start to talk more and really start to explain and tell people how she felt because some days she'd be like, ah, dad, I don't want to do this, that. But I always tell my kids, just be open. Just tell me. Like I take my kids to the some of my workout classes and they'd be like, Dad, I'm never coming back to this class. I'd be like, you let your kids? I'm like, yeah, just be open. Like tell me the truth. Don't beat around the bush. So I had to learn that just really people are never going to understand your child. People are never going to understand us in general, just us being what we consider normal. But they have to explain themselves a little bit more, and then you just have to spend time with them and understand their strengths because they have a lot of weaknesses, like but their strengths, and then you just hone in on that.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think that, at least for EJ, when we kind of realized like how smart he was, and it was he probably been doing this since he was what, 4. But you talking about watching this kid because he grandma would get him like toy cars, and we sitting there watching on the couch him take the wheels off, take the doors off, put the wheels back on, and put the doors on. We like, how does he even know how to do that? We never, he has a thing with
Mm,
cars. He likes to put things together. So it's just like you start to learn, like you said, their strengths and different things that they like. Where, like you said, the weakness they would have, a lot of weakness. And I think for me, or I would just say this in general, is trying to navigate their weaknesses and do your best to parent that to kind of cultivate it to be somewhat stronger than what it was.
yeah,
And like you said, speaking to them and having dialect conversation instead of just letting them, just kind of be by themselves all the time, is really big. So you'll be able to learn a lot just by talking to them, or how you feel. And it's funny because you talk to them, and initially it may not be, you may not get nothing, but the more you talk to them, they'll kind of start opening up, and then seeing things, because it could be tough. It'd be times where EJ just want to, I just want to be by myself. So give him like 20, 30 minutes, and then he'll come to you, when he's done. But
hmm
it's best to give them their space at times, when they need it, but also try to, if you can, show affection, because I know there are some who you can't even hug or touch. So it's
yeah,
like you said, it's different levels to, you know, the spectrum, but I just think just try to continue, because it gets tough, and you be ready to throw in the towel,
yeah,
on certain things, because you continue to repeat yourself, you continue to do things over and over, but they're not understanding, like they just don't get it. They looking at you like, well, I understand you told me to do this, but I don't get it.
yeah,
But it's just like I said, just cultivating and understanding that they're trying, they
yeah.
really do try.
And the thing is I had to like realize with my child is that sometimes they really don't understand what they're doing. Like they don't understand it's wrong. So I witnessed parents scream at kids, and then kids would not have a speech impediment, but then they would start to gain it because they believe that's how humans speak. So humans, we are natural no matter how you look at it. We are copycats. And
Mhm.
that's in general. Whatever we see, we do, especially as kids. If we hear and see different things, that's what's going to be ingrained in us. It doesn't matter if you speak English or you speak Spanish. If you take an English kid and put them in a Spanish country, they're going to speak Spanish, and that's all they know. It's just things that we do. So when you scream at a kid, they start to think that's how they're supposed to talk. So then they can never say words. So then they'll be like, oh, because they always hear you screaming. And when you scream, words don't really make sense. Ah, you need to stop doing with it. Like it comes out like, and they can't understand. So then they start to create heaven because you're always these autistic kids. They always into something. My daughter was always into something.
Yeah.
Like, and if you always scream at them, then that's all they gonna know. Like, and that's all they go when they do start speaking. That's all they go speak. And I just used to be like, I used to take so many deep breaths. You don't understand. Like,
Hmm.
okay, let me go talk to her. This is why this is wrong. This is why this is wrong. This is one funny story. I got a bunch of with this little girl. I was about to pick her up from school. I was waiting in the line. This was in kindergarten. I was in line. She had a good day. I didn't get a call. I was, ooh, this is a great day. I did not get a call today because every day I got a call or every other day. I was like, I ain't get a call. I'm pulling in line. I see a kid come out and the kid's holding his face and it's like blood and they got a towel on it. I'm like, dang, that kid must have got into something. What happened? I wonder what happened. I hope he's okay. Little girl. Then I see my child come out, and she comes out all happy, like nothing happened. The teacher was like, "Your daughter picked up the little door stopper, the wooden door stopper, and just threw it, and it smacked the girl in the face." And I just looked like, What do you say? And then I look back at it, I said, London, why did you pick it up and throw it? She said, I just wanted to throw it. And I was just like, you can't do that. And she tore this little girl's face up. And I just was like, in the car, I was just like, and she was just like, nothing happened. Like, I just threw it. It's just like that. I just wanted to throw something. I seen it was there. I picked it up and I just wanted to throw, just reacted. And I was just like, what the heck? And it was another time where my son, it was somebody coming in and I introduced them to my daughter. And then Kayla, which is my youngest, said something and she just hauled off and punched him for no reason. Just socked him. Cold cocked him. And I was just like, why did you do that? She said, I just wanted to punch him. Like she was just, it just out of just like it just she was just like that. It's not, and she when she started to really talk, when we started talking, she started explaining. She said, "It's just this urge. It's just this urge I get where I just want it, just and I just do it." And I'm like, "Well, can you control it?" She said, "Nah, not really. It's just like an energy I get. I just got to get it out." And I
Mm.
was like, all right, you better go play soccer. And I just ran her to death. And then she started, so I just started putting her in more sports to keep her. And then she ran track and she was like, this too much running. So she started to settle down. But those stories, I could never forget that one when that lady had that little girl had that. I was like, my daughter's going to jail. She's going to be in kitty jail because it was bad. She hit that lady, little girl, hard with that little block. Ugh.
Yeah, like you said, it's so many stories. I think one of the stories that will get somewhat not frustrated, but it's just funny. But he loves the swimming pool, right? And you don't know how many times everyone in the family then told this kid, stop swallowing the water. Cause all of a sudden he be in the water and all you hear him about to throw up. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? But he be so happy. And then I'm looking at him. So when I get in the pool, I'm looking at him. He under the water smiling. I'm like, dude, you can't do that. You gotta close your mouth. But it's just like he having a good time, and it's just like you said, just having to continue to tell him like you can't do that. And then it's funny because then when he do it, it's so extra out. So you like hold your breath. He's like, oh, like it's just extra out, dude. Just close your mouth. You ain't gotta do all that. But it just be so funny because in their mind it's just like, well, you told me to do this. I held my breath like you told me. But it just be funny because in his mind, that's how he think like he just gotta be extra to let me know he is holding his breath. But yeah, it's so many stories, and it's like I think when it comes to just people in general, people that he's came across, friends or whatever, everyone has a love for him. And it's just like I said, I can't explain it, but it's like I've never met a kid, even mentoring doing sports, that loves no matter what. He'll have a little attitude, but it'd be like nothing never happened. Like he wants to here, give me a hug, daddy. He wakes me up and he wants to give me a hug. Hey, you need help? And it's just like my my son, and my daughter don't even regularly do that like he does, but it's genuine. It's not because he want anything. So it's like he kind of showed me, loving no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would definitely say when it comes to him. Like you said, he could do something. And like let's say I'm like, hey, you're not supposed to do that. So he may pout a little bit, but 5 minutes later, he'll give me a hug. I'm sorry, daddy, love you. And it's just like, dang, but he be intentional with this. So it's just like, I don't know. It's just crazy how, they have certain gifts that's completely different or maybe different than, everyone else.
And I bet money when you were younger or when you were, in your first, second relationship, you pray for somebody to love you unconditionally, correct?
Yeah.
That's what they say. Be careful what you pray for. I pray for patience. And trust me, my daughter has taught me patience. There's nobody in this world that can knock me off my rocker what I had to deal with her. Like dealing with the autistic child has taught me patience. Like people like, bro, nothing bothers you. I'm like, y'all ain't met my
Yeah,
daughter. Like y'all ain't had to go to her school for 3 years, 4 years straight, every other day, or every day, like constantly, probably 80% of the time. I was so, I was so active at her school. They gave me a password to get in the building because they knew like this. We don't even need to ring you in. Yeah, come on. They knew me by name. Like I would bring cupcakes. I was so active. I would do story time. I'm like, I'm already here.
mm,
But it's like, be careful what you pray for, because I was praying for patience, and God gave me. It's like when you pray for something, He's not gonna give it to you. He's gonna give you something to help you get it.
get it
So if you
right.
pray for patience, He gonna give you somebody that's gonna teach you patience. Now it's up to
Mm,
you to understand the blessing in that lesson, but He's
right,
gonna
right.
give it to you. And if you pray for, I want somebody to love me unconditionally, you go get you somebody that's gonna hug and kiss you. You're like, oh my god, I can't even go to the bathroom. Like it's like everything on my back. Like be careful what you pray for. And I had to realize, like, I pray for patience. I got a daughter that taught me patience. Now I'm just like, nothing really phases me.
And I do want to give because I think as parents, rather in a relationship or if getting out, I think when it comes to the moms, they get their flowers too because they go through the same stuff we go through, I'm sure. So it's just like I think just parents that has a child on the spectrum, it's just like you got to do your best to try to work together as best you can
Hmm.
to be the best example for them because it's a lot harder. And like I would say, and one of the messages I would say just with people that have a child on the spectrum, I would definitely say just when it comes down to understanding that your child, you got to try to do your best to be there for them, but also help them somewhat navigate because of once they hit a certain age, that's the real world. Like when I was in law enforcement, they was just now starting to teach, okay, what do you do with someone with mental health, what do you do with someone with autism, how do
Hmm.
you know? So it's just like it's still something that's being taught, but in that event that someone don't know, they could perceive the way a person is acting completely different. And
Yeah,
I'm not gonna say that's my fear. That was my fear then. I think I've learned to just be like, God has him. So, he's gonna be good. But I try to give him the skills along with, I'm sure, his mom, my dad, my family, her family. But it's just when it comes to understanding once he gets a certain age that the world's gonna look at him just the same. They're not gonna look at him any different. And I think that's the hardest part because like I said, with that situation I brought up, you could be somewhere with the wrong person at the wrong time and they don't understand that you may have an issue or they may bully you or they may do certain things and put you in
yeah,
somewhat of a compromising situation. So that's the biggest thing that's tough, I would say. And just I would just say, just parents, just like you said, feedback on what you said, speak to your kids, talk to them, let them know you love them and you care them and give them a voice so they can feel free to talk to you whenever something's bothering them.
yeah. And I want to hear, like, if people, when they watching this, hey, drop your comments of what worked for you and what didn't. Because I mean, even not even dealing with an autistic child, just what worked in parenting in general and what didn't.
Mhm. Well, that's a wrap on today's show with autism awareness. This is open enough to listen. Like you said, if you agree, disagree, please put down the comments on how you feel about, being a parent or just being a parent in general and being a parent when it comes to being autistic. Until next time, we're gonna go ahead and get this thing going. God bless you guys, and you guys have a blessed day. We'll holler at you guys next time. Open enough to listen.
Yeah.